Hello everyone, and welcome to the show. I am your host, the one and the only Proud Forber Center, where I take my time to help you, my viewers, think outside of the 96% Democratic black voting box. My subject today is why I am not a Democrat and why I refuse to be a part in the black Democratic voting machine. I am here to tell you as well why the rest of you blacks in America should not be a Democrat or voting as a Democrat. Let me start with these blatant lies, which are posted on the Democrats' website, www.democrats.org, which states that, for more than 200 years, our party has led the fight for civil rights, health care, social security, workers' rights, and women's rights. And up until recently, this lie, blatant as well, was posted. Quote, Democrats are unwavering in our support of equal opportunity for all Americans. That's why we've worked to pass every one of our nation's civil rights laws. On every civil rights issue, Democrats have led the fight. Unquote. How can you trust anyone who would make such untrue claims unabashedly, knowing that these falsehoods can be easily refuted by a quick review of the Democrat Party's true history? If we are to only start with some simple math, my dear friends, if we look back 200 years to 1812, blacks in this country were still considered chattel with no rights or privileges of citizenship, and the main perpetrators of the alienation of those basic human rights were, in fact, Democrats. Trust me, this is verifiable and well documented, and I will give you examples today. Here are important achievements that are listed on www.democrats.org that they make claim to at present. Keep in mind, when someone brings challenge on the veracity of these statements, believe me, this history will change once again. The Democrat Party's truth is as iridescent as a soap bubble reflecting the rays of the sun, which colors changes depending upon what direction you choose to observe it from. They have claimed the passage of the 19th Amendment, which is women's suffrage, as their accomplishment, citing that, under the leadership of Democratic President Woodrow Wilson, the U.S. Constitution was amended to grant women the right to vote. On August 18, 1920, Tennessee became the 36th state to ratify women's suffrage, and it became our nation's 19th Amendment. But they failed to include this important fact that on May 21, 1919, the Republican House passes constitutional amendment granting women the vote with 85% of Republicans in favor, but only 54% of Democrats. And in the Senate, 80% of Republicans would vote yes, but almost half of Democrats no. The only truth in that statement is that, on August 18, 1920, Tennessee became the 36th state to ratify women's suffrage, and it became our nation's 19th Amendment, which required 2/3 of the states to ratify it. Ladies, you need to thank the Republicans for this one. This is one they don't even mention, which at least has some to do with the civil rights of black Americans. Wonder why they left it out. In June 1941, on the eve of World War II, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signs Executive Order 8802, prohibiting government contractors from engaging in employment discrimination based on race, color, or national origin. This order is the first presidential action ever taken to prevent employment discrimination by private employers holding government contracts. Wow. Impressive, huh? Well, maybe this is why they left it out. You see, the executive order applied to all defense contractors, but contains no enforcement authority. President Roosevelt signs the executive order primarily to ensure that there are no strikes or demonstrations by blacks, disrupting the manufacture of military supplies as the country prepares for war. So much for that being a part of their great 200 years of civil rights history. so far 0 for 0 on any true black civil rights legislation. Oh, and how about this? They, in quite a braggadocious manner, go on to let us know that in the 1960s, Americans again turned to Democrats and elected President John Kennedy to tackle the challenges of a new era. President Kennedy dared Americans to put a man on the moon, created the Peace Corps, and negotiated a treaty banning atmospheric testing of nuclear weapons. And that's somehow a giant step towards civil rights for black people. Now, this is what they did not include about JFK. John Kennedy, a Democrat, came from a rich and privileged Irish American family. In Boston, the family had been held at arm's length by those rich families who were those bigoted Northern Democrats who saw their Irish background as vulgar and the family's wealth as lacking class. This introduction to bigotry and discrimination should have given Kennedy some kind of empathetic understanding of what life was like for African Americans. However, the opposite would appear to be true. Kennedy put political realism before any form of beliefs when he voted against, let me say that again, against Eisenhower's 1957 Civil Rights Act. Kennedy had aspirations to be the Democrats' next presidential candidate in the 1960 election. If he was seen to be taking the party line and demonstrating strong leadership with regards to opposing the bill, this would do his chances no harm whatsoever. In other words, if he shows the Democrats that he was not concerned about the equal rights of blacks in this country, they would in turn nominate him to the highest office in the land. Guess what? This proved to be the case, and Kennedy led the Democrats to victory over Richard Nixon in 1960. However, after he was nominated by the Democrats, Kennedy suddenly changed his mind, and he said that he was a supporter of civil rights. Why the sudden conversion? Well, some saw the opposition to the 1957 Act as understandable from a political point of view, that is, to make sure he had all the Democratic support, and others have seen a more cynical view, which is that Kennedy recognized that he needed the black vote if he was, indeed, to beat Nixon, and to ensure that support, which is still blindly given by 96% of blacks out there in voting la land still today. He made a politically motivated call of sympathy to Martin Luther King's wife, Coretta, when King was in prison. That was well publicized by the Democrats to make the black voting public feel as if he truly somehow cared. These are facts, and you can research them and verify them for yourself. The record on JFK shows he was a man of his times and a true politician, more given to equivocation and pragmatism than to activism. But what that meant was say and do whatever it would take to get the vote, then let the chips fall where they may. You see, Kennedy outlined civil rights legislation only after most of the country was behind it and ready for him to act. To the 96%ers out there, for the most part, in the 1960 presidential campaign, he avoided the civil rights issue altogether. He did endorse some kind of federal action, but he could not afford to antagonize the Southern Democrats, whose support he desperately needed to defeat Richard Nixon. Basically, he could not jeopardize the political support of the Dixiecrats, who were the racist Southern Democrats, as well as the many other Democrat politicians in the rest of the country who were concerned about the radical change that was in the offing. Simply put, giving blacks equality. Even after he was elected president, Kennedy failed to suggest any new civil rights proposals in 1961 or in 1962. That failure was for pragmatic political reasons. Again, to keep the racist Dixiecrats happy, and also to garner their support so that he could get the rest of his agenda passed, which apparently did not include any procurement of civil rights for blacks. Hey, all you 96%ers, I am sorry to burst your iridescent Kennedy soap bubble, but this is the true Democrat civil rights history, the way it should be, completely unrewritten. Well, my friends, that is all the time I have today, but join me next time when I share with you my list of the top 10 reasons why I am not a Democrat. You don't want to miss it. Okay, until we next meet, this again your host, the one and the only proud 4%er, providing you with the necessary tools to cut your way out of the 96% Democratic black voting box.